Have you ever tried making a map in Hammer and wanted to smash your keyboard because it felt like pulling teeth? Yeah, me neither. But hey, maybe some of you thought, man, I just can't be bothered with doing this tedious mess. If that's the case, then you're not alone. And lucky for the brave few who actually admitted it, there might actually be a way to turn that frustration into something less painful, thanks to AI. Which brings me to the topic of today's video. Can you, at least in theory, make a full map using only AI? At first glance, you'd think this was a walk in the park. I mean, it sounds simple, right? Ask AI to generate a map, and voila, you're done. But no. It's nowhere near that easy. Trying this out turned into a total nightmare, time-consuming and requiring more and more patience than a cat watching a squirrel. The whole process was more complicated than I expected, and I started realizing, hey, this might actually be harder than building a map manually. To begin, I asked ChatGPT if it could generate a VMap file for Counter-Strike 2. Now, for those who don't know, that's a file type used for maps in source engine games. Simple enough, right? Well, here's the thing. Apparently Valve has some weird shenanigans going on behind the scenes. You can't just ask ChatGPT to generate a VMap file for CS2 without paying and jumping through hoops. And honestly, I'm not about to throw money at a bot for that, especially when I'm broke. So I shifted gears into an older format, the VMF file, which all the classic source engine maps use, and I guess you could call these vintage maps, if you will. That's when I shot a request to ChatGPT. I said, generate me a VMF file for a map in Garry's Mod. Sounds simple enough. Wrong. The AI spat out some instructions, copy this, paste that, save it as a VMF file, and then open it in Hammer. I followed its lead, thinking this will be easy. Except the map didn't load. Instead, I got some stupid error about a version mismatch. For people who don't know, it's like trying to start a car with the wrong key, it just won't turn over. So I told ChatGPT, your suggestion is garbage. And it fired back with some vague excuses, telling me I was doing everything wrong. I had no clue what half of this meant. I don't code, I just want to make a simple map with AI, not become a software engineer. So I did the only logical thing. I opened up a new map file in Hammer, looked at the editor version, and copied that into the bot's advice. Miraculously, that helped. Got me a little further. Progress? Maybe. But then, more errors started popping up. The next one was about editor version mismatch, which just made me more annoyed, and I explained to ChatGPT again, dude, still not working. And ChatGPT, in its infinite wisdom, suggested more fixes, none of which really helped. Eventually, I get to a point where Hammer threw an error about map version, and I just lose it. At that moment, I wanted to smash my computer into tiny pieces. Of course, I didn't really do that, though honestly I considered it. Instead, I just stared at the screen, frustrated, and worked with what I had, and wondered what I was even doing wrong. I went back and forth with the AI for at least 2 hours, trying different solutions, editing code in Notepad++, and obsessively tweaking files, all in a futile attempt to generate something decent. Finally, after hours of battling with the VMF files, changing values, fixing formatting errors, and trying every trick I could, I had a breakthrough. I fed ChatGPT a functioning VMF file that actually launched in Hammer. And miraculously, it suddenly worked. Well, kind of. I had a map that loaded, but it was full of invalid solids, which is a fancy way of saying geometry that was messed up. It was like trying to build a house with no floors. You could see the structure, but it was all wonky and unreliable. I kept chugging, editing the code more, trying different format snippets, crossing my fingers with each change. It seemed hopeless at times. Then out of the blue, something finally clicked. I managed to create a map with a solid floor that didn't crash immediately. At that moment, I felt like I had just slain a giant. I was so excited, I did an actual happy dance almost. I was bouncing in my seat, grinning like an idiot, realizing, maybe, just maybe, this AI map building thing is actually possible. That small victory lit a fire. It proved the impossible might not be impossible after all. The process was a pain, yes, but it showed me that with enough patience, persistence, and a little help from AI, you could push boundaries. I'm not saying it's ready to replace seasoned map makers overnight, but seeing that tiny imperfect floor, that was enough to make me believe that one day, AI might be able to actually build maps. And I'm pretty sure I just took the first real step. But I'm not stopping there. Before we get any further, I am aware that Earth Castle made a very similar video, but in his video, he fed the AI reference images. But that's not my goal. My goal is to only have a map generated by the AI from what code it sends me, and from as little influence from me as possible. So with that in mind, I'm not planning to take up any more of your valuable time on this. Let's jump straight into the exciting part, the results. There are 10 of them in total. The very first attempt was pretty disappointing, honestly. All it managed to produce was a single small cube. It looked like a rough draft of a very basic placeholder, not much more. To give you some context, think of like the default map you see in Hammer when you're creating new spaces, except this one's way larger. Almost exaggerated in size. It was as if the AI was just starting to get a feel for what I wanted, but not had quite figured it out yet. Lord have mercy. Once I moved to the second try, the results weren't much different. It only created a simple cube. The funny part, the cube even had a tiny player spawn in it. A tiny detail that made me think, okay, maybe it's trying to be smarter than it looks. Things stayed pretty stagnant until I hit the 6th try. Then, finally, something started to resemble a map. Sort of. It was not perfect, barely recognizes the proper layout, but at least it looked like a foundation. I spent some time trying to expand on this initial shape, messing around with it slowly. I kept it simple to avoid confusing the AI, because more complex I made things, the more it seemed to get lost. It was a process of trial and error, adding a few walls, changing the shape, trying different sizes, all to keep it from spiraling into chaos. I was mostly experimenting and just seeing what would happen. Finally, in my last push, I asked the AI to generate a building for me, expecting a masterpiece. I have to admit, I was a bit curious. What I got, though, was a bit underwhelming. The building looked kind of squished together. It had a strange proportion, and obviously, the AI had tried, but it wasn't exactly going to win any design awards. Still, I have to give it points for effort. This whole process made me realize just how finicky and unpredictable working with AI can be. Sometimes it surprises you with small sparks of creativity, other times it produces something that looks like it was built by a very confused child's first attempt at Lego. Through all this, there's one thing that's clear. AI still has a very long way to go before it creates perfect maps, but it's definitely interesting to see how it begins. Maybe this could be the start of like the AI map takeover, I don't know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna go now. If you liked it, subscribe. If you didn't, no, dislike it. Fuck me. Maybe, wait. Flip you. And flip me. I don't know. Bye.